Welcome to All Grown Up Now, Tales of a Checkered Past. I'm Kenneth D. King, podcasting from my studio near Union Square in New York City. This podcast is an evolution of the tale, All Grown Up Now, A Friendship in 3 Acts. This is Season 2, and it's called Tales of a Checkered Past. It's a collection of short stories from my salad days on up to the present. In each podcast, another self-contained story will be presented. These podcasts will be broadcast bi-weekly, so you get 2 a month. Enjoy. I call episode 64, All the Retail Ladies. When I started out in retail in Oklahoma City, I discovered one of the phenomena of retail. I call this the retail ladies. Retail ladies were, as a rule, of a certain age. They were all strong personalities, each idiosyncratic in their own way. Each one had her own distinct style. They were charm itself when need be, but I learned by observation they were never to be messed with. I have adored the retail ladies that I've been fortunate to work with, so this podcast is an homage to them all. My first retail job was in a chain of stores called C.R. Anthony's. I took the job at the store on Northwest 50th and Meridian in Oklahoma City after I had gotten myself fired from Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers. The manager was a man named Jack. Jack was married, but was seriously Nelly, way friendly with me, and had an inordinate fondness for plastic flowers. He had them for all seasons to decorate the store. Sadly, though, they were faded and dusty. But Jack still clung to them. I imagine they represented his faded youth. Working alongside Jack was his sister, Alpha May. The 2 other retail ladies at this store were Beryl and Iris. Jack's wife worked as the bookkeeper, but she was not a retail lady. She was invisible. Jack's son worked as a salesperson, and Alpha May was the head salesperson. She was definitely not a sales lady. Note the name Alpha. That should have been my first clue. Beryl was a robust British lady, blonde hair worn in a page boy, rosy cheeks, and a brisk manner. She was overly fond of tweeds and sensible Oxfords. Now, Beryl wasn't a beauty, nor was she glamorous. She made up for that, though, with her cheeky comments and commands, made in a plummy British accent. She confided me one day that her accent wasn't posh, her word, but the Okies assumed that it was. Since this was Oklahoma City, Beryl's accent was her superpower. Beryl could reduce a difficult customer to stunned, stammering, or silence with just a few words. All she had to do was amp up the accent. Now, Iris was the glamorous one. Iris was also blonde seeming to be the preferred hair color of the retail ladies. Her hair was worn in a style they called upswept. She was tall, great-looking, slim, well-dressed, preferring high-heeled wedgies, and of an indeterminate age. Now, I suspected she was over 70, but I knew enough not even to ask. Iris chain-smoked unfiltered cigarettes at a time when smoking on a sales floor was still allowed. Her voice was raspy, as you might expect, from someone who is essentially smoking road flares. Her laugh was more like a honk, and she was good with the perfectly timed tart remark. I adored and feared her equally. These 2 ladies took me under their wings and watched out for me in those early days. They explained how to sell clothes, how to navigate around Alpha May, how I should dress for where I wanted to go in life. And they were funny. Another characteristic I first saw in the retail lady. Alpha May was in a class by herself. She didn't really mix with Beryl and Iris, not that they cared. They hated her. But Alpha May was, well, the alpha, if only because her brother was the boss. Alpha May was a sawed-off, roly-poly barracuda with wavy gray hair and cat-eye glasses. She wore her lipstick right in the center of her lips and a blob of rouge on each cheek. Alpha May was so bold in her stealing of sales that she would snatch sales right out of my hands and ring them up on her number. When I complained to Jack about this regular occurrence, he just said that, oh, such a sweet thing like Alpha May would never do anything like that. She was a good Christian woman. Speaking of good Christians, I really believe that Jack was a lesbitarian. He had this theory that he wanted something for everyone in the store, as he would say. This was a very small store and carried women's, men's, and children's clothes, shoes, and some domestics like linens and even fabric. So there wasn't a lot of room for anything. However, in regards to something for everyone and Jack's lesbitarianism, one day Alpha May was in the back room checking in an order that Jack had made for the lingerie department. We all heard a shriek and just assumed that she'd seen a mouse in the back room. But we all ran back to see what was up because it was a slow sales day. We saw Alpha May standing in the back room, pale and shaking, gingerly holding a tiny clothes hanger between her index finger and thumb like it was some sort of venomous snake. She was staring at it, eyes wide, horror-stricken. Hanging from the tiny hanger was a pair of shiny, leopard print, split-crotch panties. The opening at the crotch was trimmed with black marabou and tied together with little black satin ribbon bows. In the box were several different styles and colors of the same kind of thing. Never had I seen anything like that, and I'm sure Alpha May hadn't either. But I got the drift of what kind of customer this garment was for, and she didn't shop at Anthony's. In a flash, Beryl and Iris started unpacking and examining these very unusual goods. Beryl was loudly speculating as to which ones Jack was going to take home for himself to wear. Iris remarked that his wife was such a fat ass and no fun at all that she would never fit, let alone wear any of these. I just couldn't believe my ears. Why, I'm sure there's been a horrible mistake, gasped Alpha May. My brother would never order something like this. Joining in the fun, I had started rummaging through the box and found the packing slip. I pulled it out and held it up for Alpha May to see, pointing to the style numbers and little line drawings of each item ordered. I said, "No, Alpha May, there's no mistake. See? And here's Jack's signature." And indeed, there it was. They were sent back. Poor Jack never even got to see them. Pity. My next job was at Dillard's in the Shepherd Mall in Oklahoma City. I started off in the lamp department. Across the aisle from me, managing the stereo department, was a snarky woman named Diane. Diane didn't qualify for the honorific of retail lady. She may have been blonde, she may have been a woman, but she was charmless and unpleasant, the antithesis of a retail lady. While I worked in the lamp department, I became acquainted with the two telephone operators, Anna and Louise. After selling a lamp, I would need to call the operator for a customer carryout. Now, this was back in the days when we still had rotary phones. Whenever I rang up the operator, I always asked who I was speaking to because it was impossible to tell the two apart. One day, I decided to go down on my break and introduce myself to the retail ladies on the phone to meet them in person. Perhaps then I might be able to tell them apart on the phone. Finding themselves was indeed a challenge. The building was old, and nobody even knew where the PBX room was. Most likely, no one had ever gone there. I found it in the bowels of the building, next to the boilers. Anna and Louise had been working in the basement PBX room for so long that they sounded exactly alike. There they sat at this big old switchboard, which was bristling with plugs and wires, with big antique headsets on their heads. These two old ladies looked like they had accidentally embraced punk. They were the exceptions to the rule of blonde hair. One of the gals had apricot-colored hair, and one had light blue. Years of fluorescent light had bleached their skins to a blue-white that would be the envy of any goth kid. This made their makeup resemble kabuki because they were so very nearsighted that they couldn't get a good look at themselves in the morning. When they saw an actual person in their doorway, Anna and Louise were first surprised and a little confused, assuming some sort of emergency. I explained, after introducing myself, that I just wanted to thank them for their help and to meet the ladies who belonged to the Voices. Introductions and names were exchanged. "Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for coming to see us," Anna drawled. She was the one with the apricot-colored hair. "It's Ken King." "Of course, Tim Kane. A very nice name," chimed Louise of the blue hair, smiling. They were hard of hearing telephone operators. So, from then on, when they would page me, I became Tim Kane. I even had it put on my badge. Back up on the sales floor, in the stationery department next door to me, there was a retail lady named Penny, and she ruled the roost. She was another of the exceptions to the rule of blonde hair and being a certain age. Penny was my age, a big old cowgirl from Snyder, Oklahoma, who looked exactly like Jane Russell in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Penny had the outfits, and she had the figure that filled them out. Penny had almond eyes, a mane of shiny black hair, and tits. She had the body of a Vargas painting for sure. Penny was truly a big girl. She was an Amazon at 6'3" in stocking feet. But she always wore heels because she said, "I can't hide it." She and I wore the same size. When Penny and I would go dancing at the Free Spirit, which was an Episcopal church turned gay disco, she and I would swap shoes. I would wear her high heels, and she would wear my flats. I wore her heels so that I wouldn't have to dance with her breasts bobbing at my eye level all evening long. I would get seasick, and Dramamine doesn't work for that. The guys at the gay bar believed that Penny was a drag queen because she was such a big girl. One evening, she was wearing her black spandex tube top. Remember those? Penny wore hers with silver spandex capri pants and red patent leather Candy's mules. After one comment too many about whether or not those are real, Penny pulled down that tube top, her breasts bounced out in all their glory, and then everyone could see that Penny was indeed all girl. It also created a stampede for the exit. Several men didn't shield their eyes and were turned to stone by the sight of unclothed female breasts. The management carted these unfortunates off to Will Rogers Park, where they still haunt the bushes to this day. Eventually, I was transferred into window display at Dillard's. Now, I wasn't tethered to a department. I got to travel all around the store. I got to know the retail ladies in Now, the cosmetics ladies. Wow. Because they were selling beauty, they were all wonderful to look at. Again, generally of a certain age, generally blonde, generally made up. Their personalities, like the other retail ladies, were strong, idiosyncratic, individual. Each one came from a different background and had her own distinct style. Again, they too were not to be messed with. The one I remember most, my favorite, was a woman named Charlotte. Charlotte was of a certain age, blonde, and a woman of mystery. Classy. If you asked anyone in the store who was the classiest person there, everyone would answer Charlotte. Charlotte had obviously come from a good family. She was tall, slim, as I said, blonde, elegant. She had good posture, good breeding, and she seemed to have quite a lot of money. Charlotte vacationed in her house in Martha's Vineyard. Strange. Drove a Camaro, very fast, and she sold cosmetics to have something to do. There was lots of speculation among all the other retail ladies about how much she was worth and what she did when she wasn't at work with, well, you know. Charlotte reigned over the Germain Montet counter like a queen, but a benevolent one. I would stop by to chat and have a discreet ogle of her clothes and jewelry. She had a diamond ballerina ring that had a center diamond that was the size of a gumball, surrounded with the skirt of baguette diamonds that spilled out over her middle finger and pinky. You could use it as a paperweight. Her diamond watch, she once said, "Oh, it's my work watch. I have a better one for evening." Of course. One day I came into work to find all the retail ladies at Twitter over Charlotte's new jacket. Now, Charlotte's everyday jacket, like our jean jackets, was a mink-tail jacket. So, curious, I went and asked Charlotte if I could see it. "Oh, it's nothing," Charlotte protested as we walked back to the stockroom. "I just stopped by Wilman's the other day and loved it." Now, as an aside, Wilman's was the big deal furrier in Oklahoma City and quite expensive. Mere mortals like me didn't just stop by. She picked up the blue jacket, which was hanging on a hook, like a jeans jacket. I had never seen Blue Fox before, but even to my inexperienced eye, I knew this was a small fortune. She hung it back on the hook, like a jeans jacket, and smiled. "I just don't know what everyone's excited about," she said. "It's just a jacket." But you didn't mess with Charlotte or behave badly around her. I saw what happens just once. But wow. One afternoon, I was hanging around the Montet counter, chatting with Charlotte and ogling her jewelry. A waitress from the Mexican restaurant in the mall came in wearing her uniform. She came right up to the Montet counter because it was right in front. The waitress made a beeline for the makeup testers. She was going to do her face before she went to work. The poor girl was completely oblivious to Charlotte. The look on Charlotte's face. Oh my God. Putting on her haughtiest expression and using her plummiest voice, she drifted over and asked the young lady, "May I be of service, madame?" The waitress looked up and froze. A beat skipped. Charlotte smiled, but the look in her eyes almost turned the poor girl to stone. The poor dear panicked and fled into the mall with only half of her face made up. Charlotte pivoted around and looked at me. Her nose went up just 1 millimeter. "Common," she said. That one word, delivered only as Charlotte could, sounded like the worst insult somebody could receive, and it struck fear into me. From then on, I fervently hoped that I would never do something to have that directed at me. My next job was in San Francisco for a chain of 10 stores in the Bay Area called Roos Brothers. I wasn't based in one store, but traveled between all of them doing the window displays. My base was the Stonestown store in San Francisco, which was ruled by a retail lady named Sandy. Sandy was another exception to the blonde hair rule. She had bright red hair. I suspect that underneath all that color was a dishwater blonde. Her hair actually had its own zip code. It was 1980s big hair, permed, which was the style at the time to balance the big earrings and big shoulders. But she also had a big personality. Sandy was on the younger side. I think she was in her early 30s, so perhaps we might call her a retail lady in waiting. But let me tell you, she was well on her way to full retail lady status. Happily, she liked me. When I first started, I could tell she was sizing me up. She knew I was from Oklahoma, and she felt she needed to explain life in the big city to me every now and then. That, however, stopped dead one day when I chimed in about one topic that she was holding forth on. Sandy stopped, looked at me, and asked, "How do you know about that?" "I read Vogue too," I shot back. "You know, magazines do get to Oklahoma. I knew I wasn't going to be there forever, so you know what? I studied up." So whenever I would be in the store doing displays, Sandy and I would chat about what the latest trends were, where to go dancing or buy vintage clothes, you know, the important stuff. But Sandy could get tough. I saw it for the first time over windows that I had just finished. Since we had almost no budget and gigantic windows, they were practically barns, I had to get creative. This particular set of windows was to promote Alan Flusser socks, of which we had a huge overstock. To fill these windows, I had installed a number of antique mannequins, wrapped in our burgundy lacquered paper, and tied up with rope. The socks, which were actually pretty cool and colorful, were on foot forms all around the windows. Lots of socks, lots of foot forms. The caption was, "Step 2 at Roos." Remember, this is 1982. The description doesn't do it justice. You just have to be there. As I was finishing up, a crazy woman came in, visibly irate. She asked for the manager. Sandy sailed over and said, "I'm the manager." "How dare you show dirty things in the windows? There are children who could see this," that crazy woman shrieked. And there commenced an obscenity-laced rant where the woman accused us of promoting bondage, among other things. Geez, it was socks we were selling. I was just trying to be edgy. As the woman continued her rant, I could see Sandy's eyes narrowing. She suddenly put up her hand and shouted, "Stop!" The crazy woman stopped. "You have a dirty mind," Sandy stated. "You should go home, wash out your filthy mouth, and check yourself." "I demand to see the manager! I demand you take these windows out!" the crazy lady shouted. "Listen, bitch, I am the manager, and I like it, and I say it stays. Get the fuck out of my store now, or I'll call the police." This was new to me, a retail lady who swore. Roos Brothers eventually headed downhill, and I jumped ship. I landed at Macy's in the Stone Ridge Mall in Pleasanton. I've talked about other aspects of this job in other podcasts, but this store was packed with high-octane retail ladies. First, there was Velma. Velma was another of the exceptions to the blonde hair rule. Velma ruled over the Missy's department like a demented Gloria Swanson, who she resembled. Her hair was always done in a mid-70s flip. She spackled her face with a layer of foundation and then finished it off with red lipstick and stenciled eyebrows that gave her an expression of perpetual surprise. Her clothing was usually the classic suits or dresses, with low-heeled Ferragamo shoes. The effect, overall, was ladylike and glamorous. Velma had a bit of a facial tic. It was something that would occur when she was distressed over something. This was when she would look particularly like Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, to be exact, just before Norma shot Joe Gillis in the back for leaving. When Lauren, my coworker, would see her like this, he would shout, "Max! Max!" just like in the film. Velma would laugh and then slap him across the arm. Paula was another retail lady, blonde, of a certain age, who managed the dress department. Paula drove a vintage Oldsmobile and was married to a man quite a bit older than she was. She had a high-pitched laugh that could shatter glass, but when she needed to work someone over, I suspected that she had brass knuckles in her Gucci bag. However, the major star diva of the retail ladies at Macy's was the manager of the cosmetics department, Evelina. Now, even though Evelina was blonde, she looked like Irma Bombeck, but she talked like Joan Rivers, and she walked around the cosmetics department in pink fuzzy slippers. She was not slim and elegant like the other retail ladies. Quite the opposite. But that didn't matter. She was the star. My first interaction with Evelina came one day while Lauren was talking to her, or rather, she was scolding him about not taking as much time as she felt necessary in her department. When dressing down people, Evelina could get wrought up into an operatic frenzy, which she was building up to in this particular tirade. When it appeared that Evelina was just about to break into her aria, I interrupted and said to Lauren, "Oh, never mind her. She just found out this morning that her upper arms don't fit into puff sleeves." Both of them stopped and stared at me, stunned. They had never heard that kind of comment from me. It was Evelina who spoke first. She glared at me for a few moments and then broke into a big smile. "That was good," she laughed. "You're going to get along fine here." That said, Evelina was, well, high-strung. I suspected that she was huffing Ritalin. Whatever it was, it made her cosmetics ladies crazy. Evelina's sales ladies used to drug her to make her more bearable to work for. I discovered this one day when I was walking by her office. Now, Evelina always had a tall glass of iced tea on her desk. That particular day, I saw two of her ladies in her office stirring her iced tea, Evelina, of course, not being there. When I stopped and asked what they were doing, one of them said, "We're giving Evelina her Valium." "No, you're not." "Yes, we are. It's what we have to do sometimes." "Yeah, she gets crazy sometimes," the other one said. "Come back in an hour and see for yourself." I stopped by a little later to see Evelina sitting at her desk, staring off into space. "Hey, Evelina," I said. "Hey," she said dreamily. "How are things?" "Okay." I looked out the office door and caught one of the sales ladies' eye. She just raised her eyebrow as if to say, "See?" In my last retail job, I worked at the Emporium in Stonestown in San Francisco. That particular store had its share of retail ladies, and I enjoyed hanging out with all of them. But there was one honorary retail lady that made a very huge impact on me. Her name was Miss Coke. She worked in the linens department. Now, I don't know Miss Coke's first name. She was Miss Coke to everyone. She had no first name. She had worked at the Emporium since they had broken ground for the shopping center in 1952, and she had the white skin that one gets from spending years under fluorescent lights. I remember her having faded red-dyed hair cut in a page boy and wearing brown cardigan sweaters even in the summer over off-white blouses and beige skirts. Miss Coke liked me. When I disappeared from work to go to UPS in the early days of my fledgling business, Miss Coke would give me a heads up if I had been paged, what time, who it was, anything so I could concoct a preemptive story. One day, though, as I passed by the linen department, Miss Coke grabbed me by my collar and dragged me into the linen stockroom. Pointing to a chair, she glared and said, "Sit down!" I was puzzled. Had I done something to offend her? She looked upset. "Get out!" she shouted. "What?" I asked, confused. "Look at me. Do you want to end up like me? You've got something. You have a chance. There's no place for me to go. I stayed too long. But you have a future and a talent. So get out, and I mean it, before it's too late." She was shaking. And with that, she ran out of the stockroom. I felt like I had just been in a scene from a women's prison film. There are so many other retail ladies not mentioned here who crossed my path over the years, but I have been fortunate to know and learn from all of them. For those who have worked in retail, you all have no doubt encountered your own retail ladies and have your own stories. They can be found in all levels of the retail business. The retail ladies are the aristocrats of the retail business, and I, for one, count myself lucky to have gotten to know them. Thanks for listening. You can get the audiobook All Grown Up Now on iTunes, Audible, and Amazon, or from my website, allgrownupnow.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. If you have any questions, you can reach me through the website, allgrownupnow.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Kenneth D. King, on Facebook at Kenneth D. King Design, or on my main website, KennethDKing.com.